Well, I mean, isn't that also the story of risk versus CISC? I mean, is that simplicity? There's something about simplicity that us in this evolutionary process is valued. If it's
Yeah.
simple, it spreads faster. It seems like,
Yeah.
or is that not always true?
That's always true. Yeah. It could be simple is good, but too simple is bad.
So why did risk win? You think so far
Did risk win? We don't know
in the
that.
long arc of history? Maybe not.
We don't know.
So who's going to win? What's risk? What's CISC? And who's going to win in that space in these instruction sets?
AI software is going to win, but there'll be little computers that run little programs like normal all over the place. But we're going through another transformation. So
But you think instruction sets underneath it all will change?
yeah, they evolve slowly. They don't matter very much.
They don't matter very much. Okay.
Yeah, I mean the limits of performance are predictability of instructions and data. I mean that's the big thing, and then the usability of it is some quality of design, quality of tools, availability. Like right now, x86 is proprietary with Intel and AMD, but they can change it any way they want independently,
Hmm.
right? ARM is proprietary to ARM, and they won't let anybody else change it. So it's like a sole point. And RISC-V is open source, so anybody can change it, which is super cool. But that also might mean it gets changed in too many random ways that there's no common subset of it that people can use.
Do you like open or do you like closed? Like if you were to bet all your money on one or the other, risk five versus it,
No idea.
it's case dependent.
Well, x86, oddly enough, when Intel first started developing it, they licensed it like 7 people. So it was the open architecture. And then they moved faster than others and also bought one or two of them. But there was 7 different people making x86 because at the time there was 6502 and Z80s and 8086. And you could argue everybody thought Z80 was the better instruction set, but that was proprietary to one place. Oh, and the 6800. So there's
So
like 4 or 5 different microprocessors. Intel went open, got the market share because people felt like they had multiple sources from it, and then over time it narrowed down to 2 players.
so why you as a historian?
Mhm.
Why, why did Intel win for so long with uh, with their processors? I mean,
They were
maybe
great. Their process development was great.
also it's just looking back to JavaScript and Brendan Eich is in Microsoft and Netscape and all these internet browsers. Microsoft won the browser game because they aggressively stole other people's ideas, like right after they did it.
I don't know if Intel was stealing other people's ideas. They started
In a good
making
way, stealing in a
they
good way,
start
just to
yeah,
clarify.
they started making RAMs, random access memories.
Yes.
And then at the time when the Japanese manufacturers came up, they were getting out competed on that and they pivoted to microprocessors and they made the first, integrated microprocessor
Oh,
that
I didn't
ran
know that.
programs. It was the uh, 4004 or something.
Who was behind that pivot? That's a hell of a pivot.
Andy Grove. And
Huh.
he was great.
That's a hell of a pivot
Right.
and
And
hard.
then they led semiconductor industry. Like they were just a little company, IBM, all kinds of big companies had boatloads of money and they out innovated everybody.
Auto innovated. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not like marketing. It's not any
And,
of that
and
stuff.
their processor designs were pretty good. I think you know, Core 2 was probably the first one I thought was great. It was a really fast processor. And then Haswell was great.
So what
And
what
but
makes a great processor in that? In
Oh,
your
if you
opinion?
just look at its performance versus everybody else, it's, the size of it, the, usability of it.
So it's not specific, some kind of element that makes it beautiful. It's just like literally just raw performance. Is that how you think about processors? It's just like raw performance.
Of course, it's like a
So
horse race. The fastest one wins. Now,
you don't care how, just as long as it
well,
wins,
there's the fastest in the environment. Like,
right?
for years you made the fastest one you could, and then people started to have power limits. So then you made the fastest at the right power point.
Yeah.
And then when we started doing multiprocessors, like if you could scale your processors more than the other guy, you could be 10% faster on like a single thread, but you have more threads. So there's lots of variability. And then ARM really explored like, they have the A series and the R series and the M series. like a family of processors for all these different design points, from like unbelievably small and simple. And so then when you're doing the design, it's sort of like this big palette of CPUs.
Hmm.
Like they're the only ones with a credible, top to bottom palette. And
What do you mean a credible top to bottom
well,
palette?
there's people who make microcontrollers that are small, but they don't have a fast one. There's people
Hmm.
who make fast processors, but don't have a medium one or a small one.
Is that hard to do that full palette? That
Yeah.
seems like a.
Yeah, it's a lot of different.
So what's the difference between the ARM folks and Intel in terms of the way they're approaching this problem?
Well, Intel, almost all their processor designs were, very custom, high end, for the last 15, 20
So
years.
the fastest horse possible
Yeah.
in one horse
And
race.
yeah. And they architecturally, they're really good, but the company itself was fairly insular to what's going on in the industry with CAD tools and stuff. And there's this debate about custom design versus synthesis and how do you approach that. I'd say Intel was slow on the getting to synthesized processors. ARM came in from the bottom and they generated IP, which went to all kinds of customers. So they had very little say on how the customer implemented their IP. So ARM is super friendly to the synthesis IP environment. Whereas Intel said, we're going to make this great client chip or server chip with our own CAD tools, with our own process, with our own, other supporting IP, and everything only works with our stuff.
So is ARM winning the mobile platform space in
Of
terms of
course.
process?
Yeah.
And so what you're describing is why they're winning.
Well, they had lots of people doing lots of different experiments. So they controlled the processor architecture and IP, but they let people put in lots of different chips. And there was a lot of variability in what happened there. Whereas Intel, when they made their foray into mobile, they had one team doing one part, right? So it wasn't 10 experiments. And then their mindset was PC mindset, Microsoft software mindset. And that brought a whole bunch of things along that the mobile world, the embedded world don't do.
Do you think it was possible for Intel to pivot hard and win the mobile
Sure.
market? That's a hell of a difficult thing to do, right? For a huge company to just pivot. I mean, it's so interesting because we'll talk about your current work.
Yeah.
It's like, it's clear that PCs were dominating for several decades, like desktop computers, and then mobile, it's unclear.
It's a leadership question. Like Apple under Steve Jobs when he came back, they pivoted multiple times. They
Yeah.
built iPads and iTunes and phones and tablets and great Macs. Like who knew computers should be made out of aluminum? Nobody knew that. That they're great. It's super fun.
That was Steve?
Yeah, Steve Jobs. Like they pivoted multiple times. And the old Intel, they did that multiple times. They made DRAMs and processors and processes and